right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It is 10 o'clock, or almost 10. Looks like I'll wait a couple minutes here. Just wanted to make sure I was set up with everything going on, making sure the page is working, making sure the Facebook Live is working. All right, looks good. All right, so I should be able to see comments here with the program I'm using. So wait a couple more minutes here. Assume everybody can hear me. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, we'll get started, and then anybody catching up can always rewind and watch the recording. So this is the second part in the momentum series for listings. Last week we did listing conversion. This week we're doing pricing bootcamp. So you've generated a lead, you've converted the lead to an appointment. You go through all the appointment tasks that we talk about, and then how do we lead them down a path to self-discovery so they can find the appropriate price to enter the market at. Remember, we're talking about price entry point. We're not necessarily talking about what is your final sales price. We can do a net sheet, all that stuff with the appointment, which we'll get into in a few slides here. So today we will learn the 7-step pricing strategy. Once you master this, there will be no objections to answer when you're at the table with a person. So a lot of real estate programs are based around handling objections. So if you do this right, the goal is to get to the end of the appointment and there should not be any objections if you do this right and you lead them down a path of self-discovery to find the appropriate price entry point. So we're going to jump right in. As with each of the momentum programs, we always start with checking your attitude. What are the core beliefs? The core beliefs that are pertinent to this program are number 4. There is a difference between value, price, and entry point. So value is based on historical data, right? We're going to have the historical data of the sold comps that have sold. Price is based on the seller's need. Does this meet their financial requirement? A lot of times the seller's financial requirement is out of line with what the historical data shows. So they need to make a certain amount of money. Sometimes that doesn't match up, and then we need to tell them, hey, you know what? It's not the right time to sell for you right now. So value is based on historical data, price based on seller's needs, and price entry point is based on the competition. So we're going to look at sold comps for the historical data, and we're going to look at active listings for the price entry point. We need to know where we're going to be priced compared to what's currently on the market. The value is driven by the buyer, price is driven by the seller. So we always say that all the time. A home is worth what someone's willing to pay for it and what a seller's willing to sell it for. Well, the value is determined by the buyer. We've all had listings we put on the market. We thought we had a slam dunk with the list price, and then we get an offer 5% below list price. We get another offer 7% below list price. And the value is ultimately determined by what a buyer is willing to offer. Number 19 is what gets put in motion stays in motion. One of the core beliefs, what that core belief means for this program is most people say, well, how about we start high because we can always come down, right? We can't go back up, we can always come down. But what gets put in motion stays in motion. Once you start going down, it keeps going down further than what you thought you could sell it for the first time. So just keep that in mind. What gets put in motion stays in motion. And of course, homes sell for 2 reasons, price and exposure. We talk about that all the time when we go on listing appointments. The price needs to be right, plus it needs to be exposed properly to the market. You could have a great price. If I do a crappy job of marketing, it's not going to sell. You could be overpriced. I could do an excellent job of marketing. It's not going to sell. So these 2 things need to work together, price and exposure. So think of it this way. What do sellers want? They want to sell their homes. So why do homes sell? Price and exposure. Are homes in the MLS properly exposed? Yes, most people would agree that homes in the MLS are properly exposed to the market. It gets syndicated out to a bunch of different websites. So really, one of the other things with going to the MLS is how is your marketing in the MLS? How are the pictures? How is the video? All that kind of stuff. So if homes in the MLS are properly exposed, then why do 40% of homes listed in the MLS expire? It's probably not quite 40% right now during this time. I just looked this morning. There's no expired listings in our market today or the last couple of days. But generally, historically, over the course of real estate, the last couple of decades, a lot of listings expire. So why do 40% expire? Because they're priced inappropriately. Well, who determines the price? The sellers, of course. And do sellers have access to the MLS? No, they don't. So how many homes in the MLS are priced incorrectly? Well, 40%, right? If 40% are expiring, we know there's a lot of incorrectly priced homes. Agents fail to effectively advise sellers on the appropriate price entry point. It's your job to show them the data, just like when we're working with buyers. Hey, we're going to show you a bunch of homes. We're going to give you all the information, but ultimately it's your decision which house you want to buy. Same thing on the seller side. We're going to give you all the information. Here's what's sold. Here's what's active. Here's what's expired. What do you think we should list your house at? So give them all that data, and then they can make the decision. Your ability to price a home is not in question. What's in question is your ability and willingness to lead the sellers down a path of self-discovery that ends with them taking ownership of the price entry point. So what if you're wrong in the price and miss the mark? It's fine. The seller picked the price, right? They own it. I'm sorry, it looks like the market has shifted a little since I presented my pricing tools to you when we first listed, and you chose your price entry point. The market has slowed. Here's some new comps. There's a new comp down the street with a lower price. So I think it's time that we reduce the price. So it's a lot easier to have those price reduction conversations when they've already taken ownership of the price because they picked it. We're just giving them the data. What do you think we should enter the market at? Agents fail to effectively lead sellers to the appropriate price entry point because they lack knowledge, confidence, and judgment, and or don't care. Don't care means they just want to stick a sign in the yard and get more buyer leads, right? The 3 Ps: put a sign in the yard, put it in the MLS, and pray that it sells. There's still a lot of agents that do that. So the people that don't care, like, hey, we've heard that saying in real estate before. Hey, it's a great place to have a sign. There's a lot of traffic. Well, it's a great place to have a sign if there's a lot of traffic, unless it's there for 6 months. Why hasn't that house sold? So really, we need to take listings that we know we're going to sell. That's how we make our money. So there's 4 reasons agents aren't able to lead the sellers down a path of self-discovery. If all you're doing is presenting a CMA, that's a price presentation. That's not a conversation. Remember, we talked last week in listing conversion. We're not having a listing presentation. We're having a listing conversation. So number 1, the lack of knowledge. The agent possesses incomplete information, or they're naively equipped with insufficient tools and data, and they don't have a pricing system. A lack of confidence. Agents submit to the seller demands. Hey, I think we should list your house at 199. I really want 220. Okay, great, sign here. So lack of confidence. You need to have the confidence to have these conversations with sellers, like not take listings that you're not going to sell. Lack of judgment. Agent thinks only about taking the listing. You live in a competitive world of scarcity, and you're only concerned with beating the competition. The agent does what needs to be done, and says what they need to say to get the listing. I just want to get the listing. I just want to stick a sign in the yard because I know I'm going to get buyer leads from it. If it doesn't sell, well, if it doesn't sell, that ends badly for everybody, because now that home seller's out there telling everybody, hey, I listed my house with Jeff. He had it for 6 months and it didn't sell. That place is terrible. Don't ever list there. So are you willing to get a bad reputation over getting a few buyer leads that may or may not close? 4th, lack of care. Agent wants to leverage the listing. They're only interested in the buyer leads, like we just talked about. They want to get a listing for advertising, to market on social media, to put a sign in the yard, to do open houses, to get buyer leads. So what is the role of an advisor? To determine and justify value and the entry point. What determines the value? Features, amenities, and condition of the subject home. So what justifies the value? Features, amenities, and condition of sold and expired homes. What determines the price entry point? Current market trends. So remember, we're talking about sold properties, expired listings, and current active listings help determine our price entry point. features and amenities and condition of the active homes. So we're going to compare, there might be a bunch of different homes in the same neighborhood. One might be built in 1980 with the same original 1980 everything. And there's a certain section of sold comps in the neighborhood that have inactive comps that have granite countertops and updated kitchens and updated baths. So we're going to show you that on the chart later about how to lead them down the path to pick the price point based on those features, amenities, and conditions. Sellers will trust and follow what you can logically and tangibly explain. Is it better to tell sellers or have them self-discover? You walk into a listing appointment with a 40-page CMA and say, you know what, I think you should list at $199.9. Here's the comps. It's not a very effective listing conversation. So we're going to help them self-discovery is the key. What is the best way to lead sellers to the most appropriate price entry point? Change perspective by providing unique, logical, and proven pricing strategy. We're going to give them all the data and help them pick the price entry point. Monologue versus dialogue. We've all done this. I've been in this business a long time. I've had, before I got any of this training from Remax or from any of the other coaches I hired, I did what everybody else does. They put together a CMA. They go there. Here's what we do for marketing. We're so awesome. We're going to sell your house. I sold this house down the street for this much. My company's great. I'm great. I've sold 50 houses last year. Blah, 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 blah. It's a monologue. We're just telling them how great we are. We're asking, what are their needs? Remember, we need to have a listing conversation to find out what the seller wants the outcome of this transaction to be, and also to help them self-discover their price entry point. Sellers expect help with pricing. The problem with most listing agents is they use the same approach to pricing. In the seller's eyes, all agents are the same. You've heard that before. You guys are all the same. I'm just going to pick the cheapest commission. Well, we need to show them that we're not all the same. There's a different way to do this. When every agent appears the same, the cost of services becomes a difference maker. How can you expect more in commission if the sellers perceive you as identical to the others who charge less? You can't do this is what I do for marketing that they don't do. This is what I do that they don't do. Again, you're just talking about yourself. We need to, be a consultant, be more of a facilitator in this listing conversation. Then they're going to see that you're different because you came in and you let them talk twice as much as you talked when the other agents came in and just talked about themselves the whole time. If a seller's unwilling to listen and or follow tangible logic, I presented the information and they still want to pick a price that's out of line, you are obviously dealing with someone who can be defined as unreasonable. Life's too short and the cost is too high to be in relationships with unreasonable sellers. If you're finding yourself dealing with sellers who reject logic, it's best to say next. We do that with our buyer clients. You're not going to sign a buyer agency contract? Next. Remember, we live in a world of abundance. That's one of our core beliefs. We live in a world of abundance. There's another listing out there. There's another buy out there. We don't need to work with unreasonable people. Besides, history has proven that unreasonable sellers seldom get more reasonable with time. If we start out our relationship with a listing with them telling you what to do and they're unreasonable and they want to list 20% higher than you said and you take the listing, that experience doesn't get any better down the road, right? What happens a month from now when the house hasn't sold? Why hasn't my house sold? Well, I told you we should list at $199. You decided you wanted to list at $220. Well, they forget that part. so don't work with unreasonable people. There's time reveals all. If at the end of this the seller's still unreasonable, then we know we don't want to work with them. Most listed agents and most sellers believe pricing a home is simply accomplished by multiplying the average price per square foot of the subject home. That is part of the factor, but that's not the only factor. The reason this practice is widely accepted and massively implemented is because it's easy, convenient, and can be calculated with very little information and effort. The sales price is a key component of selling a home. It deserves to be intensely studied. That is, you must consider all things that should be considered. It's price per square foot does play into the conversation, but we need to remember the features, amenities, and condition of the solds, expireds, and active listings. We need to really, really intensely study all of those. So, this will be in your booklet. If anybody watching does not have that's not in my office that I emailed the workbook out to, just message me here on my page, and I will simply give me your email address, and I'll send that to you. So things to consider during your analysis of your current approach. Did you currently consider the features, amenities, and condition of the subject home? What about the sold homes, expired homes? We need to, you should be answering yes to all these questions, by the way. So we need to understand the seller's financial needs. market trends and conditions for the area, average days on market, all those kind of things. Seasonal, if you work in a seasonal market, that factors into it a lot. Inventory, the lack of inventory right now is a big problem, so that's really driving prices up, so that can be figured into your price. And of course, the features, amenities, and conditions of the active homes, so we can determine the appropriate price entry point. And we need to also respect the seller's timing need. Again, don't overwhelm your client with a 40-page CMA that includes bar graphs, multiple pictures of sold homes. That's only herd behavior. That's what everybody does. Again, if they perceive all real estate agents as the same, the commission is the deciding factor. So you might be better than the other person. You might be awesome. You might sell more homes. You might sell them faster. But if all you do is a CMA that the person before you did, then in their eyes, you're all the same. So the commission, who's going to give me the cheapest commission? That's all I want to know. Everything else doesn't matter. You need to distinguish yourself by presenting a unique, understandable, complete set of pricing tools that revolve around crucial pricing considerations that allow for complete self-discovery by the seller. Remember, they're choosing their price entry point. Once they've chosen it, they've taken ownership of it, and the rest of the transaction is smooth after that because you didn't tell them what to list it at. They picked what to list it at. And if they're going to pick a price that you don't agree with, then next, okay, I'm sorry, I don't think you should sell right now. You have a price in mind that I don't really think we can get in today's market. So, obviously, I don't think we have a win-win working relationship here. So the art and science of pricing. The art is leading the seller to the most appropriate price entry point. That's what we're going to talk about today with the dialogue. And science, the assembling, interpreting, and supplying relevant facts and data, your pricing tools. Some important definitions. So leaders teaching others how to think so they can do what they need to do and get what they claim they want. Opinion is unfounded speculation. It's their opinion, maybe the seller's opinion on price. Value, the home's worth justified by historical data. Remember, that's the sold comps. Entry point, a price that will net the most amount of money in the current market. And list price, perception after review and analysis of the pricing data. That's the seller's job. We're going to show them our pricing tools, show them the pricing data, and say, what do you think you should list your house at? The only way to change the seller's perception is to involve them in the pricing process. Too many people come in with a CMA. Here's what I think you should list at. What do you think? Hey, I think that price sounds great. Great. Okay, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, right? But if we do this program and allow them to self-discover the list price, show them the comps, and hey, here's some homes that I think are like yours. Here's some other homes in your neighborhood. What do you think is the most? Which homes do you think are the most like yours? Oh, great, that one sold for 180. So what do you think we should list your house at? Well, I think we should list it for 180. Oh, perfect, awesome, right? That's that easy. So the goal here is not to tell the seller what to do, is to teach them how to think and lead them down that path of self-discovery. What do they want? They want to get the home sold. That's all. The ultimate goal here is they sell the house, you get a commission check. It's just easy as that. So the list price must be less than or equal to the value. The list price should never exceed the value. The seller's needs and wants are being, if the seller's needs and wants are being used to justify the price, that will not work because buyers don't care what the seller needs or wants. The seller's pricing needs might be, I really need to sell the house for $200,000 because that'll give me $50,000 to put down on my next house. Well, that's an irrational justification, especially if it's not in line with the current market of the sold comps, right? So if it's great that you want to get 200, it's great that you need 50 for your next house, but what the market is telling us is that your house is worth about $180,000 right now. If that doesn't work with you, I think you should wait to sell until the market catches up with your price expectations. As a real estate consultant, it's your fiduciary duty to help sellers assemble the plans and strategies that, when implemented and held accountable, will result in the satisfaction of their needs. But what are their needs? Their need is they want to sell a house, right? We talk about fiduciary duty. It is misleading the seller on value is actually a code of ethics violation. We all adhere to the Realtor Code of Ethics. Standards of Practice 1-3 says realtors, in attempting to secure a listing, shall not deliberately mislead the owner as to market value. It says deliberately, right? So maybe you're not deliberately doing it. Maybe, sometimes we just miss it. Everybody misses a list price every now and then, myself included. Nobody's perfect. But if you intentionally mislead a seller just to get the listing, that's a violation of the Realtor Code of Ethics. So keep that in mind. And as a result of the thorough analysis, you'll be equipped with the pricing knowledge well beyond that of the seller. The great thing about possessing this knowledge is not that you can give answers, but that rather you can ask great questions. Remember, the person asking the questions is in control of the conversation every time. Ask more questions. Listen twice as much as you talk. You have your 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So in turn, that leads the sellers down that path of self-discovery that we keep talking about. There's a fundamental difference between you knowing the correct price and entry point to the sellers accepting it. You might know. I mean, you might walk in and say, you know what, I know exactly what this house is going to sell for, but it doesn't do you any good to just tell them. Getting them to help self-discover that is so much easier to have these listing conversations. If the sellers control the pricing decisions, so just because you know how to calculate an appropriate price entry point doesn't mean your listings will sell. The only way your listings will sell is if the sellers follow your logic and take complete ownership of the appropriate price. So this is the strategy we're going to talk about today, the 7-step pricing strategy. It's to support the relationship-based approach. If you don't have a collaborative approach, you won't value the 7-step pricing strategy. Remember, we're having listing conversations. We're not having listing presentations. The 7-step pricing strategy allows you to quickly become a pricing expert in any neighborhood because it requires you to analyze all the data relevant to correctly and strategically pricing a home. So in the 7-step pricing strategy, we're going to identify and gain, lost my slide here. Identify and gain an understanding of the value ranges that exist in the neighborhood area. Step 2, test the logic using expired listings. Step 3, determine the value range most suited for the subject home. Step 4, strategically position the subject home within the value range. 5, verify the price position satisfies the seller's financial needs. We still need to satisfy their financial needs. If it doesn't meet their financial needs, then that's a tough conversation to have. I'm sorry, I don't think we can sell it for what you need right now. I really think you need to wait until the market catches up with your price. Number 6, analyze all homes directly in competition with the subject home. Remember, when you look at active comps to know where we're going to enter the market at. And 7, determine the most appropriate price entry point based on the timing needs. So timing needs come into play as well because we're going to analyze the active comps to know where we're going to enter the market. But if they need to sell in 30 days, that's going to change things, right? If they don't have a timing need that's urgent, then we can price it at the top of the price entry point range. But if we know that they have to sell fast, then that's really going to determine the price entry point. The 7-step price strategy will not reveal a different end price than a typical CMA. I mean, we're going to have the same end result, right? If you do a CMA, we tell them what we think it'll sell for. If they agree, then it's a win, right? They agreed to what we did. But some of these other things down the road become a problem. If it doesn't sell in the first 30 days and you're the one that told them what to list it at, then you're the one to blame. If it doesn't sell in 30 days and they're the ones that chose the list price, hey, I'm sorry, the market has shifted since we listed the house and you chose your price entry point. Here's some new comps that we need to look over. Hey, can we get online for a quick video conference, or can I stop by tomorrow at 5 to go over them? That pricing conversation 30 or 60 or 90 days later becomes a lot easier when they're the ones that pick the list price. Adopting the 7-step pricing strategy will take a little more time. You have to get good at it. Remember, study, practice, take action, and reinforce, spar. Take more time, energy, and effort. However, it is the only approach that ensures 2 very important things: arrival at the appropriate price entry point and complete ownership of the appropriate price by the seller. I mean, they take ownership of it. They own the price because they picked it. They feel more involved in the transaction when you do that, instead of you just telling them. Remember, we're on the same team here. The sellers and myself are on the same team. So, hey, let's have this listing conversation. Here's the data. You pick the price. So, determining the value range, you must possess a broad working knowledge of pricing in the neighborhood. You can do this by researching the MLS. You can do this by touring homes in the neighborhood. What I do with a lot of my new agents that are brand new to the business is, hey, if you see a vacant listing pop up in the MLS, just schedule a preview. Get out there and get used to looking at homes. I never tell people, hey, go look at anything that comes on the market, because we're not kicking sellers out of a house just for an agent preview, just for experience. But if you see some vacant homes in the neighborhood, just schedule an appointment, go look at it. Get used to looking at homes in the neighborhood that you want to target. So step 1 of the 7 steps, identify and gain an understanding of the value ranges that exist in the neighborhood. So the process begins by dividing the neighborhood into 3 basic categories, and you can look at wherever your market is. I'm sure you probably have the same thing in your market. In almost any neighborhood, there's 3 different value ranges. There's the high range, the low range, and the mid range. In my neighborhood, my neighborhood was built in the 1960s, so there's homes that are still original in 1960. There's some that were updated in the 90s, and there's some that were updated in the 2000s. So there's your low, mid, and high range. This will work in probably about any neighborhood that you're going to identify and target. So what puts the home in this price range are we talked about before, the features, amenities, and conditions. So you are going to create a custom CMA report, and I'm going to show you in the next slide the one that I did. You're going to sort the newly created sold summary sheet according to price per square foot, sold, high to low. Draw lines to separate the 3 value ranges, and then identify the features and combinations that constitute each range. Hey, the high range has granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances, and finished basement. The mid range, they have they have some updates. They have some newer windows, maybe a roof that's less than 10 years old. Low range, something built in 1960 that hasn't been updated at all. So there's your 3 ranges for the neighborhood. The sold summary sheet makes it easier for the sellers to identify the obvious feature patterns that exist within each range. Hey, here's the ranges, here's the amenities for each range. Well, which one do you think your house is in? Well, I think I'm in the mid-range. Okay, great. Here's the houses, here's the prices that sold, here's the home prices for the mid-range. What do you think we should sell your house or list your house at? So here's a screenshot of the one that I put together. I made a custom spreadsheet inside of our MLS. If you need some help doing that, let me know. I'll be happy to help you with that. So this is the Trenton Hills neighborhood in Adrian, where my market is, Adrian, Michigan. So as you can see, these are all in the same neighborhood that closed. I pulled the sheet up last year. I think I don't have the sold dates on here, but this is from last year. So as you can see, there's a low range, price per square foot. There's a mid-range, I put in green, and there's a high range, the bottom 4. So, the high range might have updated kitchens, baths, new windows. The mid-range might have, it has new windows, newer HVAC, newer roof, but it still has the original kitchen and baths. Low range, nothing updated at all. So if I'm taking this to a seller client in that same neighborhood, and I explain this to them, I say, hey, your house also has newer windows, newer furnace, newer roof, but you do have the original kitchens and baths. Which range do you think you fall in? Well, I think I fall in the mid-range because those houses are like mine. Great, those homes sold for between $189 and $203 based on the price per square foot. It's about $100 per square foot. Your house is X square foot, so 100 times X equals that. What do you think we should list your house at? Well, it only makes sense that we list our house at that price. Perfect. The seller picked the price entry point. They made the decision which range they were in. So this is really easy to do. Just sort the ranges by price per square foot. You have low, mid, and high range, and figure out which range their house falls in. Remember, help them self-discover. Hey, which range do you think your house belongs in based on the features, amenities, and condition? Step 2, test logic using expired listings. Remember when we had the listing conversion class, we showed them the people that were the homes that were rejected from the market. Remember, we used that word rejected. They were rejected by buyers because they were overpriced. Because remember, nobody likes to be rejected, right? So we talk about the sold comps, the dream list, which are active listings. These are the people they're dreaming they get that price. And then the rejected list is expires because nobody likes to be rejected. So make sure the bolded items are the ones you use in your dialogue when we get to that. Again, we're going to do the same summary sheet for expireds, low, mid, and high range, and present that to them. Expired listings represent the consequences of inappropriate pricing. Most homes expire because they were either listed in the wrong price range or incorrectly positioned within the right price range. If you have a price range of 180 to 200 and you should really be more like 185, but you listed at 195, then it might expire, it might not sell. After reviewing the summary sheet, this should be obvious. Pay close attention to homes that expired and then later sold, because you might have some expireds that maybe got relisted at a different price. That's a great tool to have at a listing appointment when you're talking about expireds and people who may or may not want to overprice their house. Like, hey, here's my expire sheet. Here's a bunch of homes that expired in your neighborhood in last year. You'll notice this one right here. This one was priced at $200,000, But you see, it's over here in my sold sheet. It was relisted by a different realtor for $180,000 a few months later, and it sold for $180,000. So this is the consequence of not entering the market at the right price. Step 3, determine the value range for the most suited subject for your subject home. So again, we're going to present this sheet to them. Say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, where do you think your home is in these value ranges compared to the features, amenities, and conditions of these comparables? They're going to pick the range. They might say, well, I think we're in the high range. A lot of people think they're the best house in the neighborhood. I understand you feel that you're in the high range, but the homes in the high range have brand new kitchens, granite countertops, and updated bathrooms, and you still have your original kitchen from 1980. You really think that's the right range for your house to be in? Just talking through this. Remember, it's a listing conversation. We're going to talk through this and get them to help self-discover that price entry point. Step 4 is strategically position of the subject home within the value range. You might have a value range of $90 to $100 per square foot. So where does this one fall? We need to help them go through that. Remember, it's based on features, amenities, and condition. Verify the price position satisfies the seller's financial needs. Step 5. It may not. They might say, you know what, that doesn't really get us where we need to be to buy our next house. Understand that. So my suggestion would be that maybe you should not list right now. You need to wait for the market to catch up to the price that you want. So it might be a year, it might be 6 months, depending on how fast prices are coming up. So if it meets the seller's financial need, awesome. Let's get that on the market. If it doesn't, then remember, you don't want to take a listing you're not going to sell just to get buyer leads. Everyone ends up dissatisfied at the end. And then they start bad mouthing you to all their sphere of influence because you had their house on the market and it never sold. Step 6, analyze all homes directly in competition with the subject home. Remember, this is what we're going to choose to determine the price entry point for the seller to determine the price entry point. Hey, here's now that we know what the value is based on historical data, now that we know what not to list it at based on the expired listings, we need to know where we're going to enter the market based on the competition. So we need to be priced appropriately and better than the competition in order to get your home sold in the 30 days that you want it sold. Same thing, so that spreadsheet I showed you, we're going to do one for sold, we're going to do one for expired, and then we're going to do one for active. We're going to do the same thing. Remember, you're looking for resistance that is 2 or 3 similar or better homes listed at equal or lower prices. This step also helps determine if the seller should enter the marketplace. Maybe they shouldn't. Again, if it doesn't meet their needs or if they're being unreasonable about price, then I'm sorry, I don't think I can help you right now. I don't really think the data supports the price that you expect. So I think you should wait for the market to catch up to the price that you want. Step 7, final step, of course, is for the seller to determine the most appropriate price entry point based on their timing need, because we might know, hey, we know what we can put this in the market. It might sell in 2 to 3 months at $200,000, but if you need to sell it in 30 days, you really should be at $195 or $190, whatever it is. So the seller's financial need determines the price entry point, but most importantly, their timing need. They're relocating out of the area. They're downsizing. Maybe they lost their job. They can't keep up on the payment. Like, we need to sell it. We've already missed 1 month. We need to sell this house before I hit 3 months and they foreclose on me. So timing need is a huge factor in determining the price entry point. Summary of what we just talked about here. So sold and expired properties, identify and understand the value ranges and position the subject home within the range. Justification for your price. Number 5, compared justifiable position to the seller's financial needs. So if we've justified the price, we know what the price entry point should be based on the historical data. We know what the value is. Does that meet your financial needs? Well, no, it doesn't. Okay, well then you should wait until the market catches up with the list price that you need. And based on the appreciation over the last 12 months, I think it'll take 6 months to get there. How about we catch up 6 months from now? Does that sound good? They're going to appreciate the honesty, right? If you tell them, hey, I don't think we should list your house right now because it doesn't meet, what your expectations are. How about we catch back up in 6 months and see where the market's at? They're going to appreciate that honesty. If they don't have an immediate need to sell, then they're going to appreciate you being honest with them and not just taking a listing just to stick a sign in the yard. Step 6 and 7, identify and analyze the competing homes and choose the most appropriate price entry point based on their timing need. Remember, price should never exceed value. Again, what gets put in motion stays in motion. Well, I want to list at this price because we can always come down, right? Well, we can't go back up. We can always come down. Well, once you start going down, you keep going down. It happens all the time. Start at 200 because it's, but you sold them 180. Then they go down to 195, then they go down to 190, then they go down to 179.9, then they go down to 165. So it ends up selling for less than what you originally suggested or what you thought it would sell for because they overpriced it and just started going down. Price reduction, price reduction, price reduction, because it looks bad in the market. When buyers are looking at Zillow and Realtor.com, well, that's been in the market 120 days. Everything else is selling in 30. I wonder what's wrong with that house, right? So again, price should never exceed the value. We don't need to overprice. So what you told me is that being out of the home in 60 days is your top priority. Let me assure you that my goal is indeed to get you out in 60 days. And really getting you out in 60 days revolves around two basic components, price and exposure. Since exposure does us little good if the home is incorrectly priced, we should first focus on developing a pricing strategy that will lead us to the most appropriate price entry point. Remember, we're having a listing conversation here. We're going to engage them, deliver our message, and then gain agreement on on the 7-step pricing strategy. And these are things you can role play amongst yourselves later, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. So let me ask you, do you think a pricing strategy is important? Well, yeah, I think so. Share with me why you feel that way. Okay, so when their answer is correct or close to correct, say exactly. May I consult you a little bit on pricing? Then we're going to go into our 7-step pricing strategy dialogue. So we must remember, the pricing game is all about justification. Therefore, we must put ourselves in a position to defend our list price. I mean, this is the dialogue you're going to use. Because we need to defend our list price. If you list a house, how many times have you had an offer come in below list price, and the agent, the buyer's agent, says, "Well, how did you come up with your list price?" Well, hey, here's my comps that I use. So if you can justify your price when you're negotiating a deal, you usually win. But remember, we have to justify our price, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. If you want to list at 200, and we really think it's going to sell for 190. Someone might be willing to pay 200, but we need to justify that price not only to the buyer, but to an appraiser and to the bank. So it's all about justification. Again, these are the conversations, this is the dialogue. In order to find the most appropriate price entry point, I implement the 7-step pricing strategy. My first step is to identify a value range for your home. For that information, I study what buyers have said yes to and no to in the past in past buying situations. Remember, the sold comps are homes that were sold, buyers accepted those prices. Expired properties are been rejected by buyers in the market. We don't want to be rejected. So I have analyzed what is sold and expired in your neighborhood over the past 6 months. And as you can see, per the sold summary sheet, there are 3 distinct value ranges that exist in your neighborhood. These ranges are determined by sold price per square foot and have little or nothing to do with the quality of each home. So again, we're going to separate that. We're going to show them the spreadsheet, 3 different value ranges. Identify the ranges is relatively easy. The more challenging part involves understanding why the ranges exist. It's been my experience that the combination of 6 key buying features, or 5 or 7 or whatever it is for your neighborhood, typically determines the home's value range. That those features are bedrooms, baths, stories, square footage, year built, amenities, and location. The sold summary sheet can identify any obvious patterns. Looking at the sold summary sheet, can you identify any obvious patterns pertaining to the 6 features? So we're going to show them this again. Right? And we're going to talk about why is there a low range? Why is there a mid-range? Why is there a high range? All those things come into play when we're having this listing conversation. So we're leading the discussion. The person asking the questions is in control of the conversation. Just remember that. Lead the discussion by asking questions around the obvious commonalities within the ranges, differences between ranges. The 6 key buying features will usually be primary determiner of the value ranges. Most agents simply share what is happening in the neighborhood because it's easy information to gather. A true consultant takes the path less traveled by analyzing each sale to uncover why homes sell at the prices they do. Because if we have a low range, mid-range, high range, we need to walk them through. Why did some sell in the low range? Well, because they were not updated; they were original. Why does some homes sell in the mid-range? They had mechanical HVAC updates. Why did some homes sell in the high range? Those are completely updated, kitchens, baths, everything. That's why they sold in the high range. So there's a reason it's in the range that it's in. We need to walk them through that conversation so they can come to that realization on their own. You're going to talk about, here's the script for expired listings. Now that we have formed some logical conclusions based on what buyers said yes to, we need to test our logic on what buyers have said no to in order to validate our conclusions. To make it easier, I prepared an expired summary sheet so we can identify the range where each home expired. Again, this is a really strong tool also if something that's on your expired summary sheet is also on your sold summary sheet because it's sold later at a lower price. That's a great tool to have to say, hey, here's what this one was at. It didn't sell. Here's what the new agent listed it at and it's sold. As you can see, most homes like yours have failed in the 150,000 to 175 range. Why do you think that is? Well, they were overpriced, right? Or the agent was terrible. Remember, homes sell for two reasons, price and exposure. It could totally be the exposure, but more often than not, it's the price. So after you're reviewing this information, why do you think your home expired? So this is if we're on an expired listing appointment, right? Because expired listing appointments are great because we know that they want to sell their house. They just didn't choose the right agent the first time or didn't choose the right price the first time. So if they've already been through a listing contract with another agent and we show up doing the 7-step pricing strategy, we're already going to show them how different we are than other agents because the agent they listed with before just showed up with that 40-page CMA and told them what to list it at. Expired listings are great. Don't ever, when we get back to a market where listings actually expire, this is a great pricing conversation to have with expired listings. Because you say, well, why do you think your listing expired? Usually they're going to say because the agent sucked, right? That's usually what you hear. But if we lead them down the path through the 7-step pricing strategy, they're going to come to the conclusion that, oh my gosh, I was overpriced last time. So, again, we don't take listings just to put signs in yards. Share the expired summary sheet, involve the seller, and why did these homes expire? It's really important. We're having a listing conversation. The seller's involved in the conversation. It's not me. We're not talking about our company. We're not talking about what we do for marketing. We're not talking about how great we are, how many homes we sold. We're having a conversation and letting them self-discover a lot of these things. Step 3, determine the value range most suited for the subject home. So after reviewing what buyers in your neighborhood have said yes to and no to over the past 6 months, and given the features of your home, which value range do you think your home most identifies with? Well, hey, I really think I'm in the mid-range. Great, here's what the mid-range home sold for. It's really easy, right? So I've done this before. It's a really easy conversation to have, and the mood in the room is different when you're doing this program, this kind of listing conversation versus a listing presentation, because when they're involved in the process, it just makes it a lot easier, especially when we get to the price. And if they choose the range they're in, and if they're right, if you think they're right, then it's a great tool to have. And if they're wrong, they might think they're in the high range when really they should be in the mid range. We're going to talk through that. Remember, we're just talking. We're going to keep asking questions. Well, why do you feel that you're in the high range? Well, this and this and this. Well, I understand that, but homes in the high range have this and this and this. Well, yeah, maybe I should be in the mid range. We're not going to leave until we find out that they're completely unreasonable. They're just not going to budge. They think they have the best house in the neighborhood. They should be in the high range, no matter what. Then we know that we're not going to take the listing. Strategically position the subject home within the value range. It's easy. That's usually based on their timing need. Hey, homes like yours have sold for 190 to 200, but you told me you want to have an offer under contract within 21 days. So I think we should be on the low range if you want to have an offer that fast. So that's again, we need to talk about their timing need as well. I'm not going to go through this whole script again. You guys can role play this on your own. You get via Zoom or via over the phone, wherever you want to do, or in person. Step 5, verify the price position satisfies their financial need, because it might not, So, and again, if it does not meet their financial need, then that's the conversation. I'm sorry, I just don't think we can get the price that you want right now. How about we catch back up in 6 months and maybe the market will catch up to the price that you're hoping for. Again, begin by reviewing the amenities and conditions of the subject home as discussed in your initial home tour. Then go to the sold summary report pages and review the homes with similar amenities and what range those are in. The homes with similar amenities, they might be in the high range. Hey, you just remodeled your kitchen, you have updated baths, you have updated everything, just like these other homes. So which range do you think yours is in? Well, I think we're in the high range. Great, awesome. Let's keep going. Step 6, we're going to do the same thing with the active summary sheet. So this is the dialogue that goes along with that. And we're going to share the active summary sheet to determine the potential competitors. Here's the homes that are on the market. Here's what we're going to be competing against when we enter the market. Based on your time you need, where do you feel we should enter the market at? And again, same conversation for the time you need. Again, please practice this on your own. Remember, study, practice, take action, and reinforce that behavior by going out and doing it. If an agreement has been reached on all the previous steps, like, hey, everything's bunnies and rainbows, everything's hunky-dory, everyone agrees, we thought they were in the mid-range, they thought they were in the mid-range, we thought they should list it at this, and they said, yes, we should list it at this on their own, then great, let's proceed. This is big. Eliminate seller remorse. How will you feel if your home sells tomorrow? Well, I think we'll priced it too low. Oh my gosh, we priced it too low. How did we get an offer in one day? And we have that question all the time, hey, will you take a reduced commission if you sell it in a week? Well, would you rather it take 6 months? We can do that. If you'd rather it take 6 months, I'll do that. If you feel like for me to earn my commission, it needs to be on the market for 6 months, then let's overprice it and we'll start working our way down. But really, so we need to eliminate the seller remorse. So this is the conversation for that. How will you feel if your home sells tomorrow? Well, it means you underpriced it. Why did you do that to me? Okay, may I ask you why you would feel that way? Well, don't homes usually take a long time to sell? Well, no, not if we price them right and expose them to the market right. Is your goal to meet your needs within a designated time frame? Well, yeah, I need to sell within 30 days or 21 days. So if your home sold tomorrow, then that's a benefit, right? It didn't take 21 days, it took 1 day. So now we can get to your goal of moving to your new location faster. Would you agree that pricing your home at the appropriate price entry point increases the odds of getting one or more offers within your designated time frame? Well, yeah, I guess. If we priced it better than the competition, I guess I assume it would sell faster. Would you feel your needs were any less satisfied if the offer came in on the first day as opposed to the 60th day? Well, no. Really, I just wanted to get an offer in my house. I guess, if it took 1 day, then great. Then it's less showings we have to deal with, right? So their automatic knee-jerk reaction to what if it sells tomorrow is going to be, well, you underpriced it. Why did you do that to me? But if we talk them through this with these 4 questions, it's going to be, to diffuse the situation and just keep moving forward. So again, just more of that conversation as far as eliminating the seller remorse. You can practice this on your own. We touched on the core details. Remember, with these dialogues, we're not memorizing these. When you role play them, practice them, feel free to read them back and forth when you're working with somebody. But after a while, I need you to internalize the concept of what we're talking about here and put it in your own words and use your own personality. Don't read it word for word. The pricing game summary. So why would I list my home with you? Well, because I get results. What do sellers want? They want to sell the home, right? Homes sell for 2 reasons, price and exposure. And are homes in the MLS properly exposed? Yes, most people believe that if it's in the MLS, it's syndicated out to dozens of different websites, it's properly exposed. So why do homes expire? Well, because they're priced wrong. Who determines the price? The sellers, ultimately, right? Even if you're doing a CMA and doing a presentation versus a conversation, you're going to show them the price that you think you can sell it for, and ultimately it's up to them to pick the price. Whether you told them the price or they discovered it on their own, really the seller determines the list price. Do sellers have direct access to MLS? Well, of course they don't. So why do realtors take overpriced listings? Lack of knowledge, lack of confidence, and lack of judgment or lack of care. They just want to stick a sign in the yard. What is the realtor's role in the listing conversation? Determine and justify the value in the price entry point. Remember, value is determined by historical data, price entry points determined by active listings. What determines the value entry point? The features, amenities, and condition. That's the FAC, features, amenities, and condition of the subject home. What determines the entry point? Current market conditions. What justifies the value and entry point? The FACs of sold and expired homes justifies the value. And the entry point, the features, amenities, and conditions of the active listings. Are price, value, and entry point always the same? No, of course they're not. No. What's the best way to help sellers self-discover the differences? Is to walk them through the 7-step pricing strategy. Here's the solds. Here's what expired. Here's our competition. That's it. I hope you got some value out of today's Facebook Live and training. Again, if you're not in my office, you did not get the email with the workbook, feel free to message me here with your email address. Be happy to share that with you. I love sharing this information with anybody. If we're all better, the market is better, and it's better for the real estate consumer if everybody's better and does a great job out there. So again, thank you for watching. Again, I will put these up in my Vimeo channel. Go back to my Vimeo channel if you haven't seen any of the past episodes. You can go to vimeo.com/Jeffrey Rising, Jeffrey. That's my Vimeo channel. You can see some of the past momentums. And next week will be the third part in the listing conversion class. So stay tuned for the Facebook event, and maybe I'll see you next week here at 10 a.m.